Five Nights at Freddy's is a very popular game series, with Ultimate Custom Night being the most unique as it has the most animatronics out of any of the games. However, they did forget one set of characters, and that's all the characters from the books. So, in this video, I'll be going over what if the FNAF book characters were in UCN, and how their mechanics and inclusion would affect the overall gameplay loop in normal games and 50/20 mode. So, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get into it. So for starters, I'll be covering the characters from the original 3 novels, the Silver Eyes, the Twisted Ones, and the Fourth Wall. The Silver Eyes doesn't really have any characters that aren't just Spring Bonnie and the OG FNAF crew, so let's move straight into the Twisted Ones, and let's start with Twisted Freddy. Twisted Freddy has one of the coolest designs out of any Freddy, and was something I never really noticed, having this virus-like substance along the right side of his body. And knowing the lore of the illusion discs, there's a lot of potential for mechanic ideas. And reading the book, there's this cool scene where Freddy digs himself up from the ground as he tries to attack the protagonist, and I thought a similar idea could fit into UCN's gameplay loop so well. So here's the idea. Twisted Freddy will start to dig himself up from the ground outside one of the 2 doors, viewed on the cameras next to the doors. Once he starts to dig himself up, a sound cue plays to indicate that this is happening. He has 3 stages. Stage 1, you will see his hand sticking up from the ground. Stage 2, he will be halfway out. And stage 3, he will be fully out, indicated by the sound cue stopping. Once this happens, you need to shut the door within 3 seconds, or Twisted Freddy will enter the room. The second part of his mechanic activates if you shut the door too early. If the door he is digging up from is shut before he has finished digging his way out, he will wait 3 seconds to see if the door remains closed. And if it is, he will automatically enter the room by digging into it and jump scaring you. I think this would be a really cool mechanic that would require you to use a little bit of brain power in managing the sound cues and keeping track of what side he's on, so you don't either leave the door open or leave the door closed for too long, which I think would be a really cool piece of macro play that would fit into UCN's gameplay meta quite nicely. Since if you camp Cam 2 to store the plush animatronics, you can see if Twisted Freddy is on that camera or not. However, opening the cameras is always dangerous. Next up, we have Twisted Bonnie, who also has a really cool design, although he doesn't have this cool moment like Freddy had, so we're gonna have to get a little more creative. Twisted Bonnie will enter the office through the side vent, which you can see similar to BB and JJ. If you let him in, he won't kill you right away, and instead will slowly piece himself together in your office, like having his 4 jaws come in one by one on your screen and slowly close in, and this would happen every time you flip the camera. If you flip the camera too much, Twisted Bonnie would kill you. I think this is a really cool idea, and yes, I stole this from Flumpties, but this would be a punishment for forgetting to deal with Twisted Bonnie, who has a really simple mechanic at the start, but doesn't instantly kill you and causes more of a nuisance as time goes on, which I think would be really cool. It wouldn't affect the main gameplay loop all that much, since if you're on top of it, he's really just another BB. Twisted Foxy is next, and he also has a cool scene where he jumps from the ground, except this time, it's a grave. And I have a really cool idea for this one. At some point during the night, 4 gravestones will appear throughout the cameras. 3 of the gravestones will be empty, but 1 will have a hook on it. If you click the hooked tombstone or fail to collect the 3 remaining gravestones in time, I imagine it'll be like 30 seconds from a sound cue or a visual cue playing, then you will be jump scared by Twisted Foxy. I think this would be an insanely fun yet insanely difficult challenge, almost being like an unavoidable Rockstar Bonnie situation, which will completely change the gameplay loop. Twisted Wolf is the last of our Twisted animatronics, and is probably the most iconic of the Twisted animatronics, since they are the most original and not based on one of the OG cast. And yes, sorry, there isn't a Twisted Chica, at least in the book. Anyways, for their mechanic, I want to use the sound discs a bit more and make them have a bit more of an impact. So here's the idea. Twisted Wolf won't actually attack the player. Instead, they will cause sound effects to start playing at random intervals. These sounds can range from the sounds of the doors opening and closing, to phone guy rings, to Ballora. However, these sounds will be distorted so you can hear the difference if you're paying attention. To be honest, this is a very simple idea, but one that I really like, and was actually a suggestion for what the Mimic's power could be on a previous video. But with that, we can move on to the Fazbear Frights books, starting with the one that actually got their very own game, Pit Bonnie or the Agony Rabbit. But first, if you're enjoying the video so far, Pit Bonnie here thinks that you should subscribe to help hit our goal of 100k subscribers, since I'll be personally thanking every single subscriber at 100k. But now let's bring our attention to Pit Bonnie. Pit Bonnie has a lot of potential in my mind, and I think they could work like a fake character, almost like a mimic. So here's the idea. Pip Bonnie will have two stages. The first will be a passive phase where they just appear as the animatronics on the cameras, for example, fake Foxy, fake Freddy, and even fake office animatronics like Help You or Nightmare Yarn. This won't actually do anything besides just stall you and waste your time and resources. The second stage is more interesting. Once a night, a sound effect will play and temporarily pause every animatronic and cut the power. You have 2 seconds to put on the Freddy mask, where holding space makes you hold your breath, similar to how it works in the Into the Pit game. I really like this idea, and if you really wanted to, you could just have his power be that he will randomly walk into the room, like Toy Bonnie and Toy Chica, and you need to put on the mask and hold space. But I thought the other idea was a little bit more interesting. However, this is still really cool, and I think it works really well. In terms of the night-to-night gameplay and what this would do to the 50-20 gameplay loop, I feel like it would just be an added bit of complexity to the main mask mechanic, but it wouldn't completely change the main loop, which I think is the perfect balance. Our next character that we will be discussing is Fetch, who in my opinion has a lot of potential. Their story is pretty much Fetch texting the main character, syncing with technology, and there's a lot of potential with that. So with that, here's my idea. My idea is that Fetch will lock your camera, basically pulling up the camera and locking it, requiring you to type in the word Fetch to get him to deactivate. This in my opinion would be an absolutely devastating effect, since having the camera open is the most dangerous thing that you can do in UCN. And this would force you to have the camera open for a long period of time, which could be devastating in the current gameplay formula. Next up, we have Eleanor, who seems to be the first instance of a mimic character, which it's hilarious how many fake character mechanics we can come up with. However, I do think we could make a hilarious mechanic for Eleanor. So here's my idea. Eleanor will appear on camera too and will look very similar to Circus Baby. If you buy Baby's plushie, then you will die. However, you cannot camera store Eleanor, and to scare them off, you need to look at a different camera for 5 seconds, otherwise they will kill you within 30 seconds. I think this would make the plushie mechanic a bit more interesting for those who are actually trying to buy the plushie, and would force players to switch off cam too, which would absolutely throw off the main 50-20 strategy, since you can get yourself killed by swapping cameras, which would make 50-20 a lot more intense, difficult, but also more interesting. Now, Lonely Freddy is an interesting one, since their ability in the stories is body swapping, basically being able to possess people. Seriously, that's like 5 pretending to be someone else. Scott, you have to come up with like a new idea, Jesus Christ. Anyways, for a mechanic, I do have an idea. The Lonely Freddy will appear in the room similar to Toy Chica and Toy Bonnie, except that you will be completely paralyzed once he enters, unable to perform any action or even move your camera. However, to escape, you then have to perform a quick time event, pressing space at the right time, almost like a DBD skill check. Having 2 tries to succeed before the Lonely Freddy just straight up kills you, which I think would be a really cool idea, as it would add another layer of complexity, and if you're skilled enough, it's only a minor inconvenience. And I do imagine that he would only appear once per night, otherwise he would be just a tad too oppressive. But at the same time, this is Ultimate Custom Night after all. And to how this would affect 50-20, well, it could be devastating if you don't expect it, but a minor inconvenience if you're skilled enough. Almost being like a more dangerous lull bit. Ralpho is next, and his ability is honestly going to be quite boring, since his lore is kind of boring, but I have a cool idea for him, so here's the idea. At 5 AM, cymbals will start to play, similar to Music Man, getting louder and louder, creating a ton of noise for 30 seconds, basically acting like a final noise activator to try and get noise characters to kill you. But honestly, I don't think this would be all that bad in the grand scheme of things for 50-20, but that's just my opinion. I imagine he could be problematic depending on how you manage your noise beforehand. Now next up, we have Hide and Seek, which is basically Shadow Bonnie. And to be honest, I think this character has some absolutely crazy potential for a cool mechanic. So here's the idea. A sound cue will play either of the hide and seek rabbit saying either hide or seek. If he says hide, you need to click under the desk within 5 seconds before the rabbit enters the room, or just the mask, and cutting off the power to try and find you. If he says seek, you have 10 seconds to find him somewhere in the office and click on him. If you fail to do either of these tasks, then you will be jump scared. I think this could be a really fun little interaction, which would obviously add to the difficulty of the 50-20 run. Now look, I had to include Sea Bonnies. They are just way too iconic, and to be honest, they're just going to be a distraction character. The Sea Bonnies would just fly across your screen in a swarm, almost like having a bunch of flies swarming in your face. Just a minor distraction, and honestly, it would just be a lesser version of the mini Renas, and wouldn't affect runs that much at all, but it would be really funny. Now, Felix the Shark is one of the most unique animatronics of the bunch, and I just had to try and come up with a mechanic for them, since it's just too cool of an idea to pass up on. So here's the idea I come up with. Felix will be in a water tank next to Toy Freddy's camera, and when he starts banging on the glass, you need to swap to that camera and hit him with the controlled shock, which would be a switch next to the tank. If you fail to shock him in time, he will break out of the tank and slowly flood the building, which would take about 30 seconds. And you would be jump scared once this happens, since Felix can actually make his way to you. I think this is a simple yet cool idea that would almost completely mess with the original 50-20 strategy a lot, and basically forcing you to play a no death coin run and manage Toy Freddy run. So now let's pivot a little to the Tales of the Pizzaplex books, and cover some characters before ending the video with the most iconic book characters. But first, let's start with Tiger Rock. Tiger Rock in the book is honestly pretty straightforward. But again, they have another Mimic character. Seriously, Scott, make something fucking original. Sorry about that. Now, Tiger Rock's appearance in the FNAF game Secret of the Mimic seems like a much cooler idea in my opinion. So I might just go with something relating to that game. So here's the idea. The lights in the office will flicker, and once they do, you need to check the doorways to see if you can spot where the tiger's eyes are and close the correct door. This would make it almost like a more complicated version of Nightmare and Nightmare Fredbear, which I think would be a nice touch all around with the overall gameplay loop. Lally is our next character, and they have a pretty interesting story where it's almost like they are playing a reverse hide and seek. So here's the idea. Lally will spawn on the desk in the office, and you need to click on them when they look up from the desk to send them to a random camera. Once sent to a random camera, you have 30 seconds to try and click on them to reset them. If you fail to reset them or send them off, then they will jump scare you. Obviously, this would completely change the dynamic of 50-20, but would also be a very fun and interactive mechanic to deal with. So the final Tales character that we're going to cover today is the Regent, I think that's how you pronounce his name, who is basically a map bot that uses a toxic gas, kind of like a pesticide, and this could create a really cool mechanic. So here's the idea. The Regent will pour toxic gas into the room from one of the two top ducts, indicated by green gas pouring out. A new toxic meter will slowly rise the longer the gas is let in, and this meter will never go down. To stop the gas, you need to actually close the correct duct. Once you close the duct, the Regent will wait 30 seconds to attack again. If your toxic meter rises fully, you just die from poisoning. I think this would be an insanely fun and engaging piece of gameplay, but if I'm being completely honest, it would make 50-20 mode insanely hard, and make all of the duct animatronics way more dangerous. So now, I want to go back to the Fazbear Frights books just real quick, and talk about one of the most well-known of the book characters, and that character is the Stitch Wraith, who once again is very similar to the fake characters. However, I think we could come up with a cool mechanic. So here's the idea. The Stitch Wraith will be able to enter from all 4 entrances and ducts, and will require you to track him on all levels, which admittedly is really difficult, but he can only attack one at a time, and I think it would make 50-20 possible but insanely difficult. And finally, last but not least, we have the main big bad of the series himself, the Agony, which to my understanding is the book's version of Springtrap, Glitchtrap and Burntrap all combined into one, although to be completely honest, I still have no idea. Like everything relating to FNAF, the books are confusing. Now, I actually think that we should make the Agony the ultimate final boss in UCN. My idea is that there would be a combination of pretty much every single character combined into one, being affected by heat and noise like Music Man and Jacko Chica, and having the same mechanics as well, being able to enter from all 4 entrances and the ducts, as well as Funtime Foxy's Showtime. This would be absolutely insane, and why I think it should be a 1 animatronic night just to make it fair. But considering how Agony is kind of the main thing that comes from Revenant, or the other way around, I don't know, I think this is a very fitting final boss for UCN, and would be a fun little challenge. So there we have it, these are my ideas for what if the FNAF book characters were included in Ultimate Custom Night. Now, I should say that I haven't actually read the books all that much, so I only included the characters that actually stood out to me. So feel free to let me know in the comments below what characters I should have included and what their mechanic could be. I'd love to hear what you guys have in mind. But anyways, thanks for watching. Feel free to check out the original video where I explored what if UCN included their missing characters, which now has over 1 million views, which is insane. Help it get to 2 million. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.